So Joe Biden may be the U.S. president-elect, but for now, Donald Trump is still president for another 71 days. That is raising questions about what we're going to see from the man who vowed not to go out quietly from this race. Joining me now is Professor of Political Science at Western University, Matthew Lebo. Matthew, good to have you on the show. So we know yesterday Trump announced the firing of the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper. Could this be a signal of how the president intends to use his final days in office?
It's going to be a rocky last 10 weeks. He didn't, this wasn't just a staffer that he fired. This was the Secretary of Defense. This is somebody overseeing an $800 billion budget, and he fired him in a tweet. So there's going to be a lot of this, I think, over the last 10 weeks.
I want to talk about the pandemic. I mean, the U.S. is recording about 100,000 new cases of COVID-19 every single day. Trump, we know, talked about firing Dr. Anthony Fauci on the campaign trail. What could these next 71 days mean for the pandemic?
Well, especially with this announcement that there's a really effective vaccine that's on its way out, I think that the Biden team and his task force will try and do as much as they can, sort of separately, or if they're allowed to coordinate to get things ramped up, to hint about what they're going to do, so that companies and medical facilities and all these things can get ramped up for letting a vaccine into the public. But the Trump administration is doing very little at the moment. There's very little of a federal coordinated response, PPE, and we don't know what's going on in terms of ramping companies' capacity up to create a vaccine. So I think a lot of what Biden will be doing is just sort of, acting independently and getting ready to jump into action in January.
I want to get your opinion on some top Republican Party members, because you look at that party as a whole, you've got some people saying, OK, there's no voter fraud happening. And then you've got members like Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, who are really fighting back. And I just wonder, as somebody from the outside looking at this, going, this isn't going to end well for Donald Trump. So why are you attaching yourself at this point to him? What's your take on that?
Since Donald Trump got the nomination of the Republican Party in 2016, prominent Republicans have sort of seen their fates attached to his, and they have stood by him through many, many scandals and many questionable moves, and in many ways that he has sort of chipped away at what upholds American democracy. And so this is not surprising, but I guess when you look at it and you think, well, Donald Trump's on his way out, and they still are sort of defending him and still propping up his, let's say, view of reality. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it just goes on and on. Part of it is they'd like him to still be president. They got a lot out of his presidency, and if there's a way to do that, then I think people like Mitch McConnell would be happy to have him stay as president. But part of it also is they're thinking about the future and all of Trump's voters, and they don't want to be sort of outed as against the president at this key moment. They want to be sure that they can rely on those voters in the future. Yeah, and those voters, I mean, you think about a divided country. Trump took about 48% of the vote, meaning, of course, he has support of almost half of the American public. And then you look at his Twitter following, he's got like 88.9 million followers on Twitter. So I wonder what life looks like on January 22nd, and then some, about his influence after he's out of office. I imagine a lot of tweeting. Yeah. He'll try to critique the presidency from the outside, much like he did under President Obama's terms. He was always tweeting, and that sort of worked his way into political discussion. But he will keep in touch with his supporters through Twitter. He will probably try to keep hold of the Republican Party and Republican elites on his side. And that to me, that's the most interesting question for January 22nd, is what the Republican Party looks like after Trump, and how much they want to move on from him, sort of in terms of temperament, in terms of ideology, and how much they welcome him back or they try to move on. That's really a good question. Well, it certainly is fascinating watching this from this side of the border. Matthew Lebo, we appreciate your time. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to subscribe here.
And you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.